Over a month of meticulous labor goes into creating a single sheet of paper, just a few thousandths of an inch thick. A craft that Chinese artisans have preserved for thousands of years. This seemingly fragile paper can last more than 3,000 years without decaying. Have you ever wondered why, in an age of machines and automation, they still remain faithful to such a complex process? Today, let's step inside the largest handmade paper workshop in China to uncover what amazes the world. Why these delicate sheets can cost up to $22 each, and how something as simple as paper became a cultural treasure of timeless value. Finishing a single sheet of handmade paper demands more dedication than most modern factory jobs. Inside today's fine art workshops, consistent techniques make it possible to produce between 100 and 300 sheets in one day. Yet in remote craft villages, that output drops dramatically, rarely surpassing 60. Even a seasoned papermaker with steady rhythm and favorable weather typically completes only 50 to 60 sheets after a full day of work. In truth, the journey of one sheet alone can stretch across 1 to 3 days, shaped by the fiber's character, its thickness, and the air's humidity. Each phase requires calm focus, practiced precision, and a sense of timing. That is why every handmade sheet carries more than texture or form. It holds the imprint of time, the quiet endurance of human effort, and the lasting spirit of craftsmanship passed from one generation to the next. Although each region turns to its own natural sources, the making of handmade paper always opens with the same essential act: preparing the fibers. In Japan, craftsmen favor the inner bark of the paper mulberry tree, called kozo. Nepalese papermakers use daphne or lacca, while Chinese artisans depend on young bamboo stalks. Across Europe, the tradition draws from straw, flax, and even discarded cotton and linen, taken from old textile mills. Whether gathered from forests, farmlands, or factory remnants, every raw material shares one defining quality: a high concentration of cellulose. After harvesting, the bundles are tied and laid under the sun to dry, reducing both moisture and resin. In certain regions, artisans even collect bark that naturally peels away from trees to preserve the fiber's length and strength. When fabric is used, preparation begins with sorting, cutting, and soaking to soften the cloth before it is boiled in a mild alkaline bath that removes oils and impurities. The details change depending on the material. Bamboo and straw must be chopped into fragments before boiling. Kozo bark is scraped to clear the dark outer skin. Hemp is rinsed for days in flowing water to remove sap, while old rags are pounded repeatedly until they become soft and cloud-like. After the fibers have been cleaned and organized, they move into the steaming phase, a key operation that softens the raw material and releases the cellulose inside while preserving its natural integrity. Bundles of kozo bark, tender bamboo, or hemp strands are arranged in broad wooden tubs or metal steamers, then subjected to a balance of heat and moisture for several hours. The intense temperature loosens the exterior layers, separates them from the fiber's core, and draws out resins, oils, and bitter plant compounds. For dense materials like bamboo or straw, the steaming may last many hours until the fibers become flexible enough to peel. By contrast, kozo bark needs far less time, typically 30 to 60 minutes, just sufficient for the dark outer coating to soften and detach. This step makes it possible for artisans to lift away the surface layer and expose the pale, silky fibers beneath. No synthetic agents are used here. Steam and water alone complete the transformation. Thanks to this gentle approach, the fibers retain their natural resilience, strength, and clarity. When the steaming is done, left to cool at room temperature, and then rinse thoroughly to prepare for the next stage of paper making. Once the fibers have been softened by steam, the artisan begins the intricate work of peeling, a process that relies as much on intuition as on precision. The bark is taken out of the steamer while it's still warm, at the moment when the dark outer skin has loosened from the pale layer beneath. With a slender knife or a finely sharpened bamboo blade, the craftsman moves along each strip in smooth, deliberate strokes. For materials such as kozo or lacca, this careful motion separates the softened bark and exposes the white inner fibers, known as bast fiber, composed almost entirely of cellulose, the key to paper's strength and flexibility. Once the peeling is complete, the white bark is washed repeatedly in clean cold water, often sourced directly from natural streams. The low temperature helps remove sap, dust, and lingering traces of impurities. In traditional workshops, mountain spring water is favored for its purity and low mineral content, which keeps the fibers soft and prevents any yellowing. By the end of this stage, the bark turns a gentle ivory shade, a subtle signal that the material is now clean, elastic, and ready to move forward on its journey toward becoming handmade paper. The freshly peeled bark, or separated fibers, are then laid out in thin, even layers to air dry, an important step that removes excess moisture before the boiling stage. This drying period generally lasts between 4 and 8 hours under mild sunlight, or up to 2 days when the air is damp and overcast. Artisans prefer open courtyards with gentle airflow, where the breeze moves freely, but the warmth stays moderate, allowing moisture to evaporate slowly without making the fibers brittle. When perfectly dried, bundles of kozo or lakta develop a soft ivory hue and give off a faint, earthy scent. During humid or rainy days, the material is carefully moved indoors, where controlled warm air or light charcoal heat is used to maintain a steady drying pace and preserve the fiber's natural texture. Once the fibers are completely dried, the artisan moves on to the boiling phase, the key step that unlocks the plant's inner structure and prepares it for transformation. Clean bundles of bark, straw, or fabric scraps are placed into a large vessel filled with a gentle alkaline solution. As the temperature rises slowly, natural binders, such as lignin and hemicellulose, begin to break down, loosening the connections between fibers and making them more pliable. It's the moment when the plant's inner threads are released, exposing the pure white cellulose core, the true foundation of paper itself. Depending on the raw material, the boiling time ranges from 2 to 4 hours. Tougher fibers like straw or bamboo take longer to soften, while kozo and lakta reach the right texture in roughly 2 hours. When the liquid turns a pale yellow and the fibers can be gently pulled apart without breaking, ready to move on to the next chapter in the paper-making journey. After boiling, the entire mass of softened fibers is transferred into clean water basins for the next step, removing impurities. Using their hands or fine bamboo tweezers, artisans patiently extract every small remnant of bark, dust, burnt pieces, or wood splinters left behind from the cooking stage. This careful inspection is done entirely by hand, since no machine can identify the difference between strong, usable fibers and weak, damaged ones with such precision. In traditional Japanese paper-making studios, the fibers are often spread out on wooden trays under natural daylight, so that every imperfection becomes visible. Only the long, even, and spotless strands are selected for the next step. The rest are either discarded or saved for recycled paper. Once the fibers are fully cleaned and sorted, craftsmen begin the beating process, the phase that softens, separates, and refines each strand. Each rhythmic strike, driven by hand or by a simple foot-powered device, forces the fibers to collide, loosen, and soak up water until they grow soft and elastic. In contemporary paper-making studios, this demanding manual step has largely been replaced by the Hollander beater, a machine fitted with a rotating drum lined with metal blades that stir the fibers continuously in water. Despite the change in tools, the goal remains identical: to separate and refine the fibers without breaking them apart. When the process is done properly, the pulp develops a smooth, silky texture and stays evenly suspended in water. Once the fibers have been thoroughly beaten, the papermaker begins preparing the pulp, a delicate blend that determines the sheet's final quality. The softened, silky fibers are transferred into a wide vat filled with clear, fresh water. The cleanliness and neutral pH of this water are essential, as they influence both the paper's feel and its long-term durability. Into this vat, the artisan adds a thick, slippery extract from the roots of the Tororo aoi plant, called neri. This natural mucilage works as a mild binder, helping the cellulose fibers stay evenly suspended throughout the mixture instead of settling at the bottom. With slow, controlled motions, the papermaker stirs the vat using a wooden paddle until every strand is evenly distributed. When the pulp mixture reaches the ideal balance between smoothness and dilution, the papermaker proceeds to the most defining step of all: sheet formation. Using two essential tools, a bamboo or finely crafted wooden mold and a supporting frame, the artisan gently dips the screen into the vat of pulp, then moves it in steady, rhythmic motions. Each shake, forward and side to side, helps the fibers disperse evenly across the surface. What appears to be a simple motion is actually a skill refined through years of experience. Every movement guides the fibers to interlock naturally, forming a thin, web-like structure. This interwoven network is what gives handmade paper its extraordinary durability and resistance to tearing, a strength no industrial paper, bound by synthetic adhesives, can truly replicate. In larger studios, entire rows of artisans stand shoulder to shoulder along vats, stretching dozens of feet, moving their molds in unison. Their synchronized rhythm sends soft ripples across the surface, a mesmerizing choreography unique to this ancient craft. After several seconds, excess water drains through the mesh, leaving behind a delicate, uniform layer of pulp. The papermaker then lifts the mold, lets the remaining droplets fall, and transfers the wet sheet onto a smooth surface or a felt pad. Each new layer is stacked carefully atop the last, demanding absolute concentration, for even the slightest imbalance in movement can lead to uneven fiber patterns or weak spots in the finished sheet. Immediately after the sheet takes shape in the vat, the papermaker transitions to the pressing phase, an essential step that expels excess water and binds the cellulose fibers into a unified structure. Each freshly formed sheet is stacked one over another, creating a thick, even pile. Once the desired number is reached, the stack is transferred into a wooden or hydraulic press, where steady downward pressure squeezes the trapped moisture from between the layers. In traditional studios, this task is often performed manually with a lever-operated press that depends on gravity and balance rather than mechanical power. The pressing can last anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours, depending on the paper's thickness and the room's humidity. But this step does more than remove water. It tightens the fibers, enhancing their natural adhesion and reinforcing the integrity of each sheet. The outcome is a dense, well-bonded layer of handmade paper. Its strength earned through pure mechanical force, not through synthetic glues or chemical binders. Once the sheets have been pressed and most of the water expelled, they remain damp and flexible, ready for the drying phase. In traditional papermaking studios, artisans gently peel each wet sheet from the felt and lay it face down on flat drying surfaces such as wooden boards, metal panels, or specially designed walls. Each sheet is carefully smoothed by hand to remove air pockets, ensuring that it will dry flat without curling or warping. Depending on the paper's thickness and the surrounding weather, drying can take anywhere from several hours to an entire day. Modern studios often rely on controlled drying rooms, where the temperature stays between 85 and 100 degrees Celsius and gentle air currents circulate constantly. This environment helps the sheets dry evenly while preserving their natural tone and texture. Still, many craftsmen favor sunlight drying, long considered the gold standard, as natural light imparts a warm ivory hue, enhances the grain of the fibers, and creates a smooth tactile surface. Once fully dry, each sheet is carefully lifted, stacked, and given a final pressing under heavy wooden boards. The result is a light yet durable handmade paper, defined by its unique fiber patterns, a quiet mark of human craftsmanship that no machine can truly imitate. After every sheet has been thoroughly dried and flattened, the papermaker enters the final phase, quality inspection. Each sheet is lifted toward natural or directed light, allowing the artisan to study its thickness, fiber alignment, and any minor flaws, wrinkles, thin patches, or traces of uneven fiber layering. The highest grade sheets reveal a uniform tone, a smooth surface that still shows the subtle grain of the fibers, and a touch that feels both delicate and strong. Any sheet that fails to meet these standards is carefully set aside and repurposed, often used for craftwork, gift wrapping, or recycled into the next batch of pulp. Those that pass inspection are pressed one final time to achieve flawless flatness before being stacked and packaged by hand. At this point, the handmade paper is ready to be sent to printers, runt artists, and artisans who transform it into journals, lamps, calligraphy scrolls, and works of art. It marks the completion of a remarkable journey into resilient, elegant sheets that carry the unmistakable imprint of human craftsmanship. Handmade paper. From the simplest materials, this craft connects humanity with nature, Within that simplicity lies a quiet strength, a timeless beauty that has endured through centuries of Chinese tradition. If this story inspired you, give this video a like, share your favorite stage, and subscribe to Mandarin Tech for more fascinating journeys.